Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
Um, Alyssa, thank you for being here and being flexible to tell your story at such short notice.
Yeah, I'm so nervous.
Oh, there's nothing to be nervous about.
I
It's just
haven't
me and
really
you.
ever told my story all the way like this, so it might not
Well,
get done all the way today. We'll see.
yeah, but it's good. It's an important story. Can you tell me why you feel that it's important to tell?
I feel like it's important to share what I've been through, just so I can encourage other people to either share their stories and their journeys or to reach out for help.
And I think that was kind of the idea to begin with. I mean, that we wanted to start this radio show is to talk about what we've been through. Not only just Alyssa's story. Later in a later show, we'll talk about my story as a parent of a recovering addict, as a parent of a child who was homeless and on the streets. We want to be able to reach out to people so they know that they're not alone. There's such a stigma around this, and we want people to know that they're not alone out there and that there is hope because Alyssa is a recovering addict and there is hope, and she was in the depths of really despair.
Yes.
Alyssa, let's start off with your childhood. Don't throw me under the bus too much either.
Well, with you, everything was good, except when I was young, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of yelling, and not just yelling, there's a lot of physical violence between you and my father. I remember a lot of times hearing stuff smashing against the walls, holes being, smashed into the walls, and being really afraid and just wishing that, just being in the room and wishing that, it would stop. I was scared.
Okay, yeah. I guess just one thing I want to say about that is like with childhood trauma, I think that it's such a cycle and it just continues on sometimes, and it's really a difficult thing to break. Just as I think any kind of cycle is it's difficult to break. And when your dad and I got married, we were in our 20s, barely 21, and we both had examples set for us of violence and abuse. Through our parents and seeing them fight. And I think it took us a lot of years till we really realized, hey, we're doing the same thing that our parents were doing.
Right.
And unfortunately, I do realize, like, especially for the first 5 years of your life, you had to endure a lot
Right.
as a child, and it was very hard on you. And,
I understand it now that I'm older and I see
Right.
more clearly, but then it was just hard to understand.
right. Yeah,
Um,
and to us, it was like almost the norm. I hate to say that, but it was like our parents fought, now we're fighting. That's kind of, we'll get over it, we'll make up, and then it just keeps on going after that. I think once we
right.
realized it was a cycle, that did help, and it wasn't as bad as it was the first 5 years.
Right.
After that, it got better.
Right. And I just kind of, I guess, got used to it after a period of time. And I do remember this one time when I came out of the room and you had a butter knife, but I was so young I didn't understand. And I ran out and I was like, don't kill dad. And you were like, what? I'm not going to kill him. And you slashed his speaker.
Great, not my most happy moment there, but okay, yeah, not my proud moment.
Right.
Apparently, yeah, I was very immature, young, and your dad and I were both very hot-headed, and
Right. And he had social anxiety. He used, before getting in a relationship with you, heroin and meth. So he was also in prison for a year and went through those things. So
he was in jail.
there's, jail for a year. But I feel like there's a biological factor that plays into addiction really, really heavily, but also environmental. There's just a lot of factors I feel like that play into it. But I remember dad being on benzos when I got a little older. He got prescribed it for social anxiety, which I also have. And he ended up getting addicted to it and taking it for a very long time. And when he wouldn't have it, he would freak out and he would rage. He had really bad rage problems and throw us up against the wall. And, he was insane.
Well, I remember lots of times him having, like he would flip a switch. There were things that would set him
Yes.
off for sure. I don't know if it had as much to do with the benzos as you think. Because I know him to be that way throughout our entire 23 years of marriage. So I couldn't say if it had anything to do with the benzos or not. But I know there was a time when he did get on them because he had such bad rage.
And just to clarify, you're now divorced.
Oh yeah, divorced, happily divorced, happily divorced since 2015.
Right.
Yes, but At any rate, so I think it was also just, it was definitely a benzo issue, but I think it was also just an issue with rage and anger and anxiety and things that had happened to him in his
And mental
past.
health, mental disorders as
Yeah.
well. Um, so I remember the first time that I ever took a what is the word? I guess a substance. It was Vicodin, and I remember having a really bad migraine one day, and nothing that I took Tylenol, and nothing I took would make it go away. And I remember you telling me, well, you could take a Vicodin, and they're up in the cabinet, and it'll help with the migraine. So I ended up taking one, and I remember just feeling so good, just feeling so peaceful and nice for the first time, like what felt like my whole entire life at that point. And so I went and I took another one, and I felt extra good for a long time. And I remember just really, really liking how that felt. And I remember telling you that I had taken two, and you freaked out. And I didn't realize at the time why it was such a big deal. And I don't think you realized at the time what kind of an impact it held on me. Um, so I remember you hid them after. I remember you hid them, and I looked for them for a long time, and I couldn't find them, and I just kind of gave up. But it wasn't until I was 16 that I started coming across, Vicodin, ecstasy, things like that. The first time I ever took ecstasy was with a cousin of mine, and it was a great experience at that point. And I remember I just went into like a phase of taking, ecstasy or Molly, pure MDMA. And we also started when I was 18, I believe. Oh, we would drink a lot too, hide alcohol. And I think it was when I was 18 that you ended up finding the alcohol bottles inside of the room, and you ended up kicking me out because you had enough. I remember you telling me a couple of different times, like, if I keep finding these, I'm going to kick you out. And
Can I say something here?
sure.
I think one thing that I was thinking about is you kind of skipped over a part that I think is kind of important. You had said to me one time when you were homeless, you had mentioned something to me what the appeal was and how you were feeling as a child. Can you explain that a little bit? Can you go into detail about that a little bit?
When I was a child.
Like when you felt like you had.
Oh, when I took the Vicodin.
No, when you were saying you always felt like you had no control, so you had to do
Oh,
something.
right. So basically, yeah, there, I didn't just take the meds. It was more like before that, I didn't have those kind of things to make myself feel good, or feel better, or more in control of myself. So I would cut. I would make myself throw up, and that it wasn't a weight thing or anything like that. It was just more of something that I could control on my own personal level. I would, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to say, but I would like slap myself in the face or hit myself, and it's just something that made me feel a sense of security.
I bring this up only because I recall you telling me that, and you were homeless at the time, and I was kind of shocked by it. I do remember you playing the pass out game, and that caused
That's another thing.
yeah, and I really went nuts on you for that. And I remember you throwing up at times. I never knew you were cutting yourself, but I remember you telling me this when you were an adult and you were homeless, and it was strange because within a week, I think, well, maybe 2 weeks, I heard an interview with Demi Lovato, and she was talking about the same thing. She was literally saying, like, when I was young, I used to feel like I was out of control and I wanted to do something. I felt like something was missing, so I would cut myself or I would vomit, and she would do the same thing. And I was kind of shocked. It got me thinking about there has to be some kind of link. And I don't know, like, as a mother, I'm not a mother, but as being in a family member of addicts, my dad and my uncles, all these people having the problem with addiction, and then marrying somebody who had a problem with addiction before, he was a recovering addict essentially. But I don't know why it never dawned on me that that could happen to my kid. That this could be my kid. This could happen. But I did speak with a counselor recently. I was talking to her about childhood trauma, and she was saying that when there's childhood trauma involved, some of the kids are a little more resilient than others, and they find that it has to do with temperament. So she said some people's temperament, they're able to get over things a little better. And you and I have talked about that too, like with you being in recovery. I think even in some of your meetings, they've talked about sensitive people are often the ones who become addicted. And almost everyone in my family that I can think of who are addicts were very sensitive people.
I'm not saying that all sensitive people become addicts.
No,
just saying
no, no. Just saying that there
the
might be
people
a
with those
component.
factors in it.
There might be a
right.
component to temperament, childhood trauma, how somebody deals with a situation,
Temperament.
how you get over a situation, and even with the anxiety. I mean, you've mentioned that the anxiety has helped you. I mean, the alcohol has helped you with anxiety,
Right.
and things like
Yep.
that. So
That was the first, the first point when I realized that I could actually start talking to people and not be afraid to do it. Where I could actually meet friends and be fun and let loose and be myself, which I think is normal for a lot of people when it comes to alcohol. I don't know what exactly takes it to the point of that to complete all out alcoholism, but it was just something, a feeling that I was chasing, and I just liked it a lot. But I would get to the point of blackout drinking every single time, and I couldn't help it, and I felt like it was normal. And I remember at this point, I didn't think that I was an alcoholic. A lot of people would tell me that I was, even you, and bless you. A lot of people would tell me that I was, especially you, and I didn't agree. I just thought I was having fun and this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I felt like everybody was doing it. This is normal. This is fun. This is just what you're supposed to do. And it took a lot of hangovers for me to realize, I think, that, this isn't normal.
you had an issue.
I had a problem, but it was for a long time. I think maybe like 2 more years until I realized. And that's when I got into the point of Vicodin. As an alternative to alcohol, I guess. So me and my cousin, actually, let me first get to my ex. So I met this guy. Well, basically when my mom kicked me out when I was 18 because she found all the alcohol that I had been hiding in the room, I moved into my aunt's house. And in my aunt's house, my cousin had invited over a friend to live there because his mother was very abusive, very physically abusive, and had beat him up so many different times. So they basically said he could live there, and I lived there at the same time, and I ended up really liking him. I think mainly because of the trauma that he had been through and the trauma that I felt that I had been through. And then he was an alcoholic and he drank a lot. And I liked that because it meant, it was normal for me to be able to drink around him like that and he wouldn't judge it. So, but I don't think I realized that at the time. I think it was just a comfort to me. So we ended up leaving my aunt's house eventually and going and living with his mom, which was one of the biggest turning points, I think, of my life up until, this point even. So she was really, what's the word? She was really physically and emotionally demeaning, and he was as well. But first it was directed towards him, and he would direct his towards her. But eventually it got to the point, and we were drinking every night. She would buy us alcohol, and we were all and plus we were of age at this time, but she was buying us alcohol every night, and we were all drinking it all together. So it was kind of like her support almost. We were her support in drinking. I don't know what the word is for that, but yeah. So he ended up getting really abusive when his mom and him ended up having a big falling out a couple of different times. And he ended up headbutting her in the face and breaking her nose open. And I was standing right there, and it was really emotional for me. And so he got arrested, and she had him sent to jail, and I was living with her for a little while, and then I ended up moving back in with my mom. And yeah.
Yeah, I remember at that point, I think when you moved back in, at that point, I can't remember if I was divorced or not at that point.
I don't remember either. No, I don't. I think that you guys were...
Oh, no, we were together because I remember
Together.
you taking a bus because you wanted me to take you to see him in jail, and I said no. And so I remember you didn't have a license or you didn't have a car. I think you didn't have a car.
Right.
And so you started taking the bus to go see him
Yes.
the whole time he was in jail. And I think that was a good period of time in your life, actually.
Well, that's what you thought, but behind the scenes, so I was going to my cousin's house. He was my best cousin, and he still is. But I would go to his house on the weekends while he got so basically he got sent to rehab from jail for 6 months, and I would go and visit my cousin on the weekends, and we started taking Vicodin. And that was just for fun. It just started on the weekends, and we were just having a good time, and it felt really nice. And it just made all our problems feel like they were not there. So much better. We felt it's like a warm feeling inside. I can't explain it. It's just a warm, nice, good feeling. And we ended up doing it. So one day, I remember when I finally figured out that, you know what, I think I'm an addict, is when I decided to take some home. And he didn't want to, but he was like, okay, go ahead. So he gave me like a handful of pills, and I took them home, and I would use them every day after that. And that was after about 3 weeks of the weekends on using it. And I had never told my boyfriend at the time that I was doing it. I kind of hid it from him for the whole 6 months, and while he was in rehab, when I went to go visit him. And when he came back, we went and lived with his mom again, went and moved back in. And right before that happened, it was about 3 days before that, I had walked in on my cousin and his boyfriend smoking heroin. And it was like the biggest shock, I think, of my life. It was just, I don't know, it was just really, it was a sad thing to see, but it was also exhilarating, I guess, exciting. And so I was scared, but I wanted to be a part of it. And plus, it was a hard time at that point to find Vicodin or methadone. We were taking methadone pills. It was a hard time to find those things at that point. And we had also tried to stop a lot of times too, taking Suboxone, and just, we had a job and we worked at the same place. And it was just, we couldn't figure out a way to stop. So we decided just, if we couldn't stop, we were going to go ahead and keep going. And so the pills were just going fast. We were taking maybe like 16 pills in one sitting. And I'm surprised my liver's not completely torn up. Well, it kind of is, but that's because, I have Hep C now, but that's later on. So basically, I tried it with my cousin. He begged me not to, but I was like, you know what? That's so hypocritical. You're doing it. Let me do it. And so he was like, okay. So he let me try it, and I loved it. And he ended up letting me take some home. And I took some to the house with my ex and my boyfriend at the time. I don't want to say any names. That's why I'm going to just keep talking like this. But so I took it home and I hid it in my car. And I remember, so he was really possessive at this time. So he searched through all my things. He looked through my phone. He wouldn't let me go certain places. And he had a habit of every once in a while at this point, hitting me or choking me. But at this point, so that was just the possessiveness. So he went into the car and he found the sack of heroin that I had, and he freaked out on me. And I remember being so scared that because he was gonna flush it, being so scared that I was gonna be sick, and wanting so desperately not to be sick that I was thinking of any way in my mind to make it so that I didn't have to let that heroin go and not be sick.
Tell me something real fast, Alyssa. What is it like to be sick?
Oh, sorry. Sick, meaning withdrawal. It's the worst feeling I could ever imagine. It's way worse than just normal sickness. You're like eating yourself alive on the inside, just trying to rip out. You're sweating and you're throwing up, and all your mind keeps telling you to do is go get well. Go get well.
And what does it mean to get well?
Not withdrawing anymore.
So go
pick up some drugs and make yourself feel better, getting well from being sick, which is withdrawing. So I was so desperate not to get sick that I ended up begging him to just try it. Just try this heroin. It's so good. You'll feel great. It's an amazing feeling. And I remember at the time feeling really guilty about it too, and I do now as well. Because it led him down a really, really bad, really evil path. But it also it caused a lot of pain and trauma in my life as well by doing that, I believe. So basically he did. He gave in and he tried it, and he ended up liking it and did it for about a week with me. And him and his mom got into a huge blowout, really bad, violent argument, and she kicked us out. So we went and lived in a trailer, a little mobile home in the back of his grandparents' house. And he told me, we're going to stop. We're not doing this anymore. And so for about a day, well, maybe a morning, I was laying there sick, and he woke me up and was like, I feel horrible. What is this? I don't want to feel like this. And I told him, you're sick. You're withdrawing. And as sad as it is to say, at that point, I was really happy that he was sick, because I was like, yes, that means we're going to go pick up, because he's not going to want to feel like this anymore. And it makes me sound like an evil person, but it's just where the addiction takes you. So basically he's like, okay, let's go pick up. So we went and picked up, and everything was actually amazing for the first month. The first month, it was great. Everything was perfect. We had our own little place, and it didn't have electricity or water in it.
Doesn't sound great.
Oh, it did have water, but it didn't have electricity or heat.
That doesn't sound great, Alyssa.
No, with the heroin, it was amazing at first. And then after the first month, something inside of him started turning. He became really aggressive and angry, and he ended up getting to the point where he was so, I don't know what the word is, but the rage just filled him inside so much that he liked to make excuses to fight with me and be able to hit me or choke me every single day. So when he would leave, he would like to try to lock me into this trailer and just keep me in there. And it was hot outside. There was a crack in the window. And I remember my dad, who I hadn't talked to in a long time, coming and showing up and trying to break into the window to try to kidnap me and take me out to take me to rehab. And I called the cops on him because I was like, I am not going to rehab. And it was a big mess. And so I got really depressed. It was about a year of that. He wouldn't let me he didn't want me to talk to family. He told me they hated me. He put a lot of things in my head. It was almost like Stockholm syndrome, honestly. I got into it like really bad. He ended up, there was a lot of sexual violence as well with him. He sexually assaulted me, and he would just say horrible things. It was about a year of that. And eventually I just couldn't take it anymore. I remember feeling like the only physical touch that I've had that was positive would be when I would have sex with him. And that was, I remember feeling like, oh, I haven't even had anybody hug me or tell me they loved me or anything in over a year. And I remember, so I would go out of my way to have sex with him a lot because it was the only way I would ever get physically touched. And I remember that drove me really crazy. And so I ended up trying to commit suicide. I took a bottle of antidepressants. I swallowed the whole bottle, and I wrote him a note, and I left the bottle on the ground, and I laid down. And I remember thinking, if he comes home before I go out, then I'll tell him. And he ended up coming back, and I didn't want to tell him because he started a huge argument with me right away. But he saw the note. It was sitting right next to me, and he read it, and he was like, "You are so effing stupid." And so he called 911, and they came, and they had me chugging that charcoal drink, and I was throwing up. But a cop showed up, and he asked me what happened, and he's like, "Why did you do this?" And I didn't want to say because I had the cops called so many times when he was abusing me, and I never told them. I just kept it a huge secret. And I remember them telling me before, why, if there's this lady, the cops came back and they were like, well, there was this lady down the street who was being abused by her boyfriend, and she didn't tell us. And for years, we would come and show up, and he killed her. He ended up killing her 2 weeks ago. I remember them telling me that, and I was like, nope, I have nothing to say, because I just kept it a huge secret. I didn't want to tell on him. So even this time, it's like I didn't want them to know, but at the same time, I kind of did because I was so mad at him. And I just looked at the cop, and I was like, he was like, "Oh, so what happened? Why did you do this?" And I said, "Ask him." And I looked at him, and the cop 5150'd me right there. And so I remember I was at the hospital, and I really, really wanted to have a cigarette, and I didn't realize at the time what 5150 meant. So I tried to walk out with my cousins showed up, and they were like, "What happened?" This is the time I ended up telling my mom that I was using. And I remember I was just so upset at this time when my aunt first came up and she hugged me, and me and her cried, and she was like, you have to tell your mom. And I told her about everything, and I was like, okay, I will. But then when I saw my mom walking up the hallway, she looked so mad, and she walked down, she was like, I could hit you right now. You said something like that. And I was like, but she didn't understand. She was so upset. And so
I can
go ahead.
actually, when I recall what happened, I hadn't talked
We
to
think of things different. We see
Yeah.
it different ways.
but I hadn't talked to Alyssa in almost a year. I was in the
Because
middle,
he wouldn't
I was-
let me.
and I was
Yeah.
in the middle of a divorce, and I really missed her, and I was trying to get a hold of her, but I never could, and I actually felt abandoned too. I felt upset and abandoned and alone, but I was doing, I was dealing with a divorce and a lot of things in my own life. So at this point, when I walked up to her, she was skin and bones. I mean, skin and bones. And I was upset because
I was 82 pounds.
yeah, and I was upset because all I knew was that she tried to kill herself, and I just felt frustrated because I was like, I've tried so many ways to help you, and I can't. And I think when I said that I could hit you, it was because you told me. You immediately, like, instead of like warming me up to
Oh,
it,
I
you,
think-
you
yeah.
just immediately said like, Mom, I'm a drug addict. I'm shooting up meth and heroin, and that's when I was
Because
like,
I was
"Ugh."
afraid to tell you, and Aunt Tammy said I needed to. Oops, I shouldn't have said names, but she told me I needed to. So I ended up just holding my arms up because I had a bunch of track marks, which are marks from the needles. I forgot to bring up the needle story, but I'll bring that up next. And so I had track marks all up and down my arms, and yeah, and I was afraid to tell her because I was kind of
Well,
embarrassed.
because I did threaten you at that point. And
Yeah,
it
but
wasn't-
I said I remember exactly what was said because she said
and you laughed when you said it.
Because it was just traumatic. So I had a bunch of track marks, and I said, Mom, I've been shooting up, and what did I say? Oh, and you were like, I could choke you, and I was like, Jeremy beat you to it.
Oh, no, I don't remember you saying that. I don't remember you saying that at all. But I do remember saying it loud enough to where I got kicked out of the hospital, I think. But anyways, yeah, so that happened. Yeah. Because in my mind, it was like, how the heck are you doing this? You don't, as a parent, you don't understand it. You've done everything, you feel like you've done everything you can possibly to keep your child healthy and well, and not only that, there was so much of it in my family, and Alyssa knew. I mean, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking, like, I've told you all these stories of my dad, my uncles, all these people who have killed themselves or lost their minds or ruin their families or whatever it may be. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, are you in the same world as me? Like, why would you do this? So yeah, I was really upset.
I never thought I would be like that either. I mean, I remember you taking me to church twice a week for Awanas and regular church services, Girl Scouts, cheerleading. You did everything for me.
Now
I
you're
remember.
just sucking up to me.
No, but no, really, I do remember. And I was always good in school. I was a good kid. I was
She was a
shy.
very
I
good
think I
kid.
got detention one time, and I got suspended once because I got into a fight because some girls were throwing rocks at my friend in PE class and calling her calling her a bad word that I didn't like. And so me and this one girl got into a fight over it, and me and that girl ended up becoming friends. We're
Yeah,
still
you
friends
were-
to this day now.
You were like the sweetest kid ever. Such a good girl. I
And
mean,
so it
really,
just-
I never had any issues. And so, yeah,
could
blew
happen
my
to
mind.
anybody,
So
it
when
feels
I'm
like.
in the hospital with you and you're telling me this, I was literally in shock. The only thing I knew you had a problem with alcohol, and you had told me that you had used ecstasy in high school, and that just shocked me. And
Right.
I guess as a parent, you feel like you can beat it out of them, or you can yell at them enough, or you can, tell them enough stories, or there's some way that it's just not going to happen to your kid. That's not true. Unfortunately, it's not the parent's fault, even if you think it is. And of course, we get in that trap and we feel bad and we feel like we did something wrong.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the childhood trauma with me fighting with my ex all the time did not help, but it's not the cause.
Right. There's so much more to it.
There's more to it. Okay.
Right. Okay, so let me think. Oh, I forgot about the part of the needles. So basically, we had been smoking it, heroin, for a long time, and we ended up meeting these people. The guy I just found out, that guy that introduced us to needles, just passed away last month, which it's just sad. I haven't heard from him, though, and it's been like 6 years since I started needles, or no, longer than that. I think I started needles when I was 21, and I'm 30 now. It's been 9 years. That's crazy. Anyway, so we went to his house, and this is my first experience ever hearing about Hep C. And we found out he had it, and I was really scared of it. I was like, am I going to get it just by standing next to him? Like, this is, ugh. And so I wasn't sure, And he explained to us what it was. And he was like, hey, an easier, because we were like, we can't afford this anymore. It's really expensive for the heroin. And we were picking it up from them as well. And they were like, well, you could actually put it in a needle and use a tiny, tiny bit, and it would be a lot cheaper. And I was really scared at that point. I'm like, I don't want to use a needle. That's
You
terrifying.
hate needles.
I was so scared
She
of
hates
needles.
needles.
I'm still scared of needles, and I used needles for years. It's a weird thing. But so he ended up, we weren't sure for a long time, and it took us maybe a month. And I remember us being really sick, and even just smoking a lot of it, it was just too much money. And we were sick because it would go away so fast. So I was just like, one day, let's just try using a needle. Let's just do it.
And
he
this
was
is
like,
not uncommon. This is kind of the progression. I mean,
Right.
the way you describe it is really the progression of things for
Right.
most people.
Exactly. And he was like, come on, let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and do it then. Yeah. So we went over to the guy's house, and he's like, all I have are used ones. And we're like, what? Wait, I don't know. Well, he's like, well, if you bleach it, that could kill it, which I found out later. It's not true. It could still survive.
Kill what?
The Hep C.
So he had Hep C.
Yeah, I already said that.
Oh, sorry, missed that part.
So but he did, and we ended up using his needles, and we didn't get Hep C. I got it years later, but he ended up hitting us, which means shooting it into our vein for us. He hit us, and it was such an amazing rush. Like, it was the best feeling I think I've ever felt in my life. And him and his girlfriend at that point were shooting up heroin and meth, and they told us that we came to them wanting to quit about 2 months after shooting up. We couldn't stand it anymore already, and they told us the best way is to smoke some meth and not do heroin
couldn't
to
you
kill the
stand it?
withdrawals. It was just miserable. Having to try to find a vein, which at this point it wasn't as hard as later, but I don't know. It was just miserable. We wanted to stop.
It was costly, or
It cost money, but it wasn't just the money. It was just, we were isolated from everybody, didn't want to see anyone. We're embarrassed to see people. We had track marks. We just didn't feel like we fit in or were a part of anything anymore, which I think he was trying to isolate and get me away from everybody. And so this was working out great for him, but he also became way more violent than he had been before. And it just was miserable. I didn't want to do it anymore. But so the guy that we went to his house, and he ended up giving us some meth and told us, smoke this meth when you're withdrawing and you'll be fine. And then the meth addiction began. And we had this is the worst time in my life. I mean, it was 120 degrees outside. We were in a metal mobile home. There was a pipe leak in the carpet, and we had little maggots living in the carpet. It was bad. We were on meth, and then we started doing meth and heroin together and shooting it up. And the needles would get clogged with our blood, and we would still shoot it in anyway because we were sick. So we would find old ones with blood in them, coagulated, and we put water and shake it up and try to hit ourselves. And it was just really bad. It was really bad. And so we ended up, I ended up going back home eventually. After I had tried to commit suicide, I went home for a little bit and then went back to him. And then finally I left because him and his mother both attacked me and physically attacked me. And so he would stalk me. He would come and break in the window, like open the window didn't lock, so he'd come in the middle of the night. He raped me in the middle of the night. It was just bad. It was bad. He tried to kidnap my cat. He kidnapped me, and he would hold my hair and smack it against the middle column of the car over and over for hours. It was for hours, driving around telling me there's cops behind us and I better shut up. It was scary. And I eventually, the cops, he had a knife on me, and I tried to spray this pepper spray, this bear mace that I had, not realizing my sister, who was 11 at the time, tried to spray it in the sink, messing with it because she didn't know what it was. So I tried to spray him and nothing came out, just dribbled on my finger and burned me. And he came at me with the knife, so I ducked, and he knocked me down on the ground, and I fell out of the gate, and a neighbor saw me, so they called the cops, and he saw the neighbor who yelled, "Hey," and he took off running. That was one of the last times I ever saw him. I saw him one other time after that, but my mom sent me to rehab.
Oh, wait, can I interject something here?
Mm-hmm.
At one point during this whole mess, he was coming around, and actually after he was coming around, he was still coming around, and we had gotten a restraining order, I believe. There was a guy on a bicycle that was in the neighborhood. At this point, I didn't live in a good neighborhood because after the divorce, I got evicted. I lost my job. A lot of things happened. So
It was gang territory.
Yeah, it was a gang neighborhood. So the guy on the bike, who was a really nice guy, told us, hey, I just said hi to him one day. And then the next time I seen him, he said, hey, there's this guy. And he said the guy's name. It was her ex, who told me to like watch you and let him know what you're doing and let him know, watch the house and this and that. He said, but I'm watching and making sure he's not coming around you,
Yeah, and he wound up, I became really good friends with him, and he was a blood. He was a gang member. But me and him, since we both were using meth, he would come over while my mom was at work, and he was a big, scary guy. He would lay out all the things he had stole that day on my mom's table. She was at work. I was just like, he was just giving me free drugs. And so I would let him come in and make him some food, and he would just lay out all the credit cards and phones.
I did not know these things.
All this crazy stuff, and I would just sit there and do meth with him. But he told me that my ex had paid him to watch me, and he told me that he said, I'll pay, if I pay you enough, will you kill her? And you didn't know that? He tried to put a hit on me, and he's like, but I really like you, so I'm not going to do that. You want me to do something to him? And I was like, no, what? And so, but he ended up doing something to him. He kidnapped him, and he beat him up, and he stole his radio. Yeah, that was insane. And I told him, I was like, I told you that wasn't okay, because I'm not for promoting violence and terrible things on people, even if they deserve it. So basically, I don't remember which point I'm at. I'm thinking, you sent me.
You went to rehab again.
You sent me to a rehab in Laguna Beach because you were trying to get me far away from him because he was stalking us, like literally stalking at this point, taking pictures of me outside of the house and he sent me pictures of me through the blinds in our house, like just the creepiest stuff. Took pictures from the inside of the house while I wasn't there, while we weren't there, taking pictures of the cat, sending them to me. It was just creepy. So I ended up meeting my now children's father in rehab out there. That was 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I think. I fell in love with him. People would tell me like, "Oh, you're not going to make it with him." So we tried really, really hard, to make it work. That's why we were like fighting extra hard. And
I remember those days because I got a call from your counselor. I got a call from many counselors that were upset about you guys' relationship, but this was the first in a
we
long
went
line of
rehab
it.
hopping.
Yeah, this is the first in a long line of it. But I remember just feeling like, I'm not happy about it, but what can I do about it? She's an adult. And the counselor got kind of mad at me and was like, wanting me to take it so serious. And I'm like, well, she's an adult. What can I really do? She wants to date somebody. At least she's not dead. I mean, she's in rehab. And of course, I had this idea that, like, no one in my family ever went to rehab. They just used a lot of drugs and got into fights and did stupid stuff and end up like killing themselves or paranoid, schizophrenic, things like that. So I thought, like, in my mind, like, oh, she's in rehab. It's all going to be great and roses, and she's going to go there and she's going to get better and get out and be fine. I mean, somewhat, not entirely, because I know that this is a serious problem, addiction. It's really, it takes a long time for people sometimes. But I did kind of think that way. So when she called me, I did not take it very serious as far as, like, two people on drugs are not going to do well together. I mean, I kind of knew that, but
right.
I was still in a state of like, okay, she's in rehab. This is a good thing. But go on.
Right.
Sorry.
And I also, we went rehab hopping. So we went jumping rehab to rehab, and we would, leave and end up using and go to hotels together, and some really grimy hotels. And then we ended up at 6 months, I got pregnant. And I wasn't supposed to be able to get pregnant because I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So my chances of getting pregnant are very, very low. And I got pregnant at 6 months with him. So I ended up quitting. I moved back in with my mom, and so did he. And I was good until I had her. It was 2 months later, and I found out that my baby's father had been using pretty much the whole time. And so I saw him using, and it, I guess I kind of used that as an excuse, to go ahead and do it too, since he was, but I really just wanted to, I guess. I did, and seeing it just kind of made it harder. So
Well, I think that goes back to what the counselors say, as
right,
far as like two people bringing them each other down,
right.
when they're together and they're using.
Yeah, exactly. And when I started using again, I don't think you knew about it for
No, I didn't.
at least 6 months, 7 months,
I kicked him out before kicking you out.
because you found out about him before you found out about me, and I just hid it for a really long time. And I think I ended up, it was when my daughter was about one, and then you sent me to rehab, and I brought my phone into that rehab, and I brought Suboxone, and it was just a no Suboxone. Suboxone is the strip, or the what's the word, the drug that they give you to help you ease your withdrawal pain. They give it to you in rehab or not in rehab. You could get it prescribed, which right now I'm on Sublocade, which is a once a month shot in my stomach, and it's basically the same thing as Subutex. It's buprenorphine, and it slowly gives me a little bit over the month, and it helps with cravings or withdrawals.
It's also a blocker, right?
No, actually, the Suboxone is,
Okay.
but this isn't. Buprenorphine and naltrexone. Naltrexone is the blocker. The naltrexone is, but this doesn't have the naltrexone. But yeah, and we ended up, so I'm still on it. And a lot of people think that's a crutch, but I feel like as long as I am not on the streets shooting up and putting myself through what I was before, then it's okay. Then I'm doing so much better than I was then. I still consider it clean. But so anyway,
And
yeah,
they've lowered your dosage too quite a bit, right?
right, yeah.
And yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely gonna have to have a part two of my story, but yeah, I'm still going. So basically, I went to the rehab, and they found out that this was a no Suboxone rehab, and I snuck two.
What was the reason for bringing him in?
I didn't want to be sick.
and that was I do recall, like, that was a lot of your reasoning throughout the whole time, was you were so terrified of being sick.
Right, exactly.
And so it does help. Like,
It does.
it does help. You have to detox when you're on heroin. When you're on meth, you don't have to detox, correct?
I mean, it is a detox still, but it's more like mental, and the physical is more, you're tired. It's just exhausted, not just tired, exhausted. Yeah, there is a detox and there is a withdrawal, but it's more for the heroin.
What I thought was interesting was, like, when you guys were doing this rehab hopping, like you call it, going in and out of different rehabs. And it was like having like a little vacation. A lot of them were really nice. I mean, the one in Laguna Beach was right by the beach, and you guys were at the beach and stuff. But I guess my point is that there's big money in that, and that was like so shocking to me and disappointing to me, because I was like, people were making money. I mean, the baby's dad had a person who, I think he was like a broker, and he would find him rehabs, and I was shocked.
Yeah, he would get money off of finding us a place.
And I think you even told me, like, he would get more money if it was heroin that he was using, because he had to detox, so there was more money.
Yes, there is.
So he helped him get heroin.
It's a huge, it's profitable company off of industry that they make off of addicts and addiction. Yeah. I mean, look at methadone. Look at the methadone. The government using methadone and just trying to keep people addicted forever. I mean, I'm not saying methadone is a bad thing. As long as it keeps you off the street, but there's always a way that the government's going to try to make money off of it, and people are going to try to make money off of it.
And that broker,
and abuse it as much as they
I think
can.
you said even the broker ended up helping him get heroin at one point. Am I wrong about that?
He did.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And then he helped him get back into a rehab right after that.
And how, when you guys were on the streets, how did you make money to get the drugs?
We stole. We went to we basically went to, like, I'm not going to say the stores, but big stores, tool kind of stores. And I would put on like a hoodie or a backpack, and I would be the decoy at first, and he would go in, and I would pretend like I was, I'd put a bunch of expensive things that obviously I can't buy, and they knew it, and they'd be watching me, and then he would go out the back door with a bunch of stuff because he looked clean cut, and then at the end I ended up stealing a lot of stuff, and I got caught a lot too. I mean, I got away with more than I got caught for, but I've been arrested a few good times.
Yeah, but when you say, like, because I'm over here, like, being the mom praying that you'll get arrested and they'll actually keep you. What was the issue about them not keeping? I mean, it had to be over a certain amount that you had to steal.
No, I don't feel, okay. Yeah, they pretty much let everybody go right away. But I don't know necessarily if getting arrested and keeping somebody in jail. I mean, for stealing, yeah, obviously. But when they're using, and that's the
That's not
main
the
reason
answer.
for it, I don't feel like that's the right answer. I feel like there needs to be something else. I mean,
Rehabilitation, something else.
something.
But letting them go.
We
This
need
whole,
not
the,
just letting go, but we need help.
But the catch and release thing is like a little
It's
crazy because
it's
people.
it's a joke.
I'm
but
bringing this up only because people often, if they haven't dealt with this and they don't know how it goes, they're like, oh, well, they're going to get arrested and then they're going to get better, perhaps, or they're going to be in jail for a long time. And that wasn't the case. I mean, I would see you and Chance in and out of jail, maybe 2 days in jail before
Right.
you were out again, and it's like you had to steal at least $1,000, in order for them to keep
something
you.
like that,
And you
like
got
500 or something.
and young people are smart, and it's sad because when I was looking around, I would see people your age. Back then you were in your 20s, but that was the generation. And when the homeless population was those young people. And when
Right.
I was growing up, the homeless population was more older people, maybe Vietnam vets, which was very sad too. But now you're seeing like these kids that got caught up in these opiates, and they're there.
It's a huge
Tell me
thing now.
just a little bit about, we only have a few more minutes, but tell me something. Like something I also found interesting was fentanyl. Like when fentanyl I first started hearing about it on the news and stuff, it's like this terrifying thing. It's like, oh my gosh, this stuff. I mean, even if you touch it, you're going to die.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah, they're mixing it with heroin to kill people. I mean, there was all
There's
these
so many
things.
people dying. It is getting mixed with heroin now, and I don't necessarily think it's to kill people, but I think it's to get them more addicted and keep them coming back buying their stuff because you get more high off of it. But it's also just a smaller amount. It's a tiny amount that you need.
But they don't have like a way to mix
die.
it to really even
That's
know.
why I ended up overdosing the time that I did overdose. I overdosed once and I went out for what Chance said it was like 5 to 10 minutes. He said I was gray and blue and he was giving me CPR for a long time. He broke my sternum trying to give me CPR and he said he thought I was gone. He thought that was it. He said I wasn't breathing. And then he said I eventually finally
He said
came
he
back
lifted you up to take you. It was in Palm Springs.
to
He
drag
said
me out of the
He
bathroom.
lifted you up. It was Christmas time, and he ran into some company Christmas party of all craziness and was yelling that you were overdosing. But when
And everyone just stood there staring.
well, they were shocked. And then when
Nobody helped though.
but when he lifted you, he said that's when he felt like you started to vomit or you took a breath because of the way
Right.
when he lifted you. So
And
that
I
was,
still have so much more that I could tell
There's-
that I wanted to tell, but can't get to it today.
yeah. So at this point, we're just going to say. Alyssa will return to tell the other part of the second half of her story on March 5th. Next week, tune in because we're going to have Mary Beckham back on to tell the second half of the story of her brother, Johnny Beckham, our family member who passed away on June 29th, who was murdered in the town of Parker, Arizona. If you want to know more details, please tune in. And you can also watch the podcast are on KCAA radio.com. And please follow Justice for Johnny Beckham on Facebook. Also follow Dying to Get Well on Facebook. I think that's almost about time. And I'm just going to say thank you for listening to KCAA 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, and 106.5 FM. Have a good night.
Bye.